Hey everybody. So some of my friends have been asking me to explain how I render hair lately. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I've got this bylith drawn out here that we're going to use, and I've got my palette set up. But first thing I want to talk about is my brush, which seems like a weird place to start, but for a long time I used a different one, and then I switched to a brush like this, and it kind of opened a whole new world for me, so we're going to talk about it. So I'm using the Procreate HB pencil, and I use it for everything. I think it's kind of the default, or I think it is a default brush, but I am not sure about that. But what I like about it is, so you can see, like at this edge it's like flat, right? Hard edge. And then but over here it's like feathered. So if you have more painterly style like I do, I like that it allows you to like blend stuff on the soft edge if you want, but then if you want to carve out a hard shadow, then you can also do that with the other edge, right? So that out of the way, let's move on to the next step. So we know, or we're gonna decide that our light source is coming from over here. So we are going to separate out our hair pieces, and I don't normally draw this. This is just something I'm thinking about. We're gonna separate out our hair pieces into big old chunks. And it's good if you have like one area where you know the hair is all like separating from. So like right here, top of her scalp. Let's separate the rest of these out. In this kind of area in the back, it gets kind of weird. This like whole middle area here is kind of nebulous, but like the important bits are just these parts that stick out, right? So let's get those. Just draw a line in between there for separation. And then what we're thinking about, if I can draw this line correctly, that'd be great. Okay. What we should be thinking about is like the form of these big chunky pieces. So like for this one, her bangs right up here at the front. So for the angle that we're at, the highest point of these bangs should be like right here, in my mind, right? Or for this one, it should be like right about here. And then for these back pieces, I think this one be like right there. This one, I think this edge probably, well, probably more like, yeah. So we just need to know, like, if we were thinking about these as like really complex, like rectangular prisms, we're kind of thinking about like what the sides would, like where the corners would divide them, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm doing a good job making a visual of this. And then we can get into shading. So one thing I want to talk about real quick, get my palette put away, is like, so like if you've ever done the, draw an orb exercise, I'm sure you know that like you spend most of your time like doing this shadow and this highlight. Like this little bit is kind of an afterthought, right? Because it's so simple. One thing that I think doesn't quite click with most beginners, I know it didn't for me for a long time, is that like when we're drawing a character, we want to draw this little shadow right here. And let me show you what I mean by that. like, pretend I hadn't done her chin right yet. We want to draw this shadow, but we don't consider that just the curvature of her face makes its own shadow, right? We don't consider this. So generally, the rule is like, if the shadow comes from just the form of the object, like the sun being cast down on the form of the object, if the shadow comes just from the object's curvature, then you're going to have a feathered edge, like a sort of blended edge to the shadows like you do have here. If the shadow is being cast by something, like this ball is between the sun and the ground, right? So the ball casts this shadow. Because it's a cast shadow, it's going to have a hard edge. It's not blended like into the ground, really. So that's just one thing to keep in mind as we start coloring the hair. So to choose our palette, what I've done here is, so we take our base color, have it right in the middle, and then we're just gonna go over to our blue. For this, I've chosen to do blue shadows or blue cool shadows and warmer highlights. You can see I've chosen this blue here. That is pretty far away from our baseline green. Another thing that beginners don't really think about, I think, is that you should really push your values. So, I've gone all the way around, and then I've gone all the way from here to here. That's a big step, and our darkest step is even further, like from here to here. So don't be afraid to push that, because it'll make your stuff more interesting. So let's get a layer clipped to our base, and we're just gonna keep in mind how we were thinking about form a couple minutes ago, and we're gonna think about how, because these shadows are being cast by the sun, they're not being cast by an object, we're gonna do a feathered edge, hopefully. Yes, I have my brush situated the right way with the canvas rotation. So let's just try and keep all that in mind as we block in some shapes here. And don't be afraid to go really big with your shapes. The way my brain works, usually my stuff comes out better if I draw over too big and then I erase. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. And then I'm gonna pick up my darker blue to go and redefine some of this area that's already dark. So, shadows are basically done. Now it's time for highlights. Make a new layer. So how I choose my highlights is, so if we have our base color and we went towards blue last time, we're going to go in the opposite direction this time. And because we saturated our blues so much, we're gonna not saturate our highlights. If anything, we're gonna desaturate them. So what I've chosen is, oh, it's really close, is just a highlight that's way more towards greenish yellow, and it's a lot lighter and a little bit desaturated. And highlights are just kind of go nuts. And this will make sense in a minute. Kind of go nuts with them. Just wherever I think it makes sense to have them. And don't be afraid to put your shadows right next to your highlights, if that makes sense. Hair is very contrasty, so you can like get away with that sort of thing. So after I've done that, kind of got that blocked out, what I like to do is I just have that highlight color and I just saturate it a lot. And what I do with it is I go in and I like hedge in on the highlights I've made. Try to make these like, I don't know what you call this shape, like this weird shape. Try and force that. And generally it goes between highlights and the shadows, but it's up to you. That's just what looks good for me. Okay, now that we've got that, we can go in with our original base color and kind of start defining some of these like smaller, like start carving out indications of smaller hair portions. So because this is where her hair separates, or like where it comes from, there's gonna be a lot of that here. But also like kind of break up these big chunks of highlights a lot. And then you could probably like do some of that into the shadows a bit. No, I might do like slightly lighter color of the shadow for that. And I wouldn't go too hard on it, because at the end of the day, you still want these shadows to be readable, right? We have this big area where there's no shadows at all, so maybe we add some here and there just to break it up. So I think that is about good. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I've already done it because I recorded this video once before, but you can see like on her skin here, I've added like this area right here has a light spot. If I could, yeah, has a light spot. There's a little darker spot on her skin up here. That's just bounce light. So like the color of her hair is going to reflect onto her skin, and likewise the other way, right? So what I like to do is just I drop her skin, go really gently over like areas like this. And we'll just lower that opacity a lot. And it just like adds a little extra touch of realism. And I think that's everything. Feel free to ask questions if I didn't explain something well, because I'm sure I didn't. But thanks for watching. I hope this helps. Okay, bye.